The first generation of the Porsche Cayenne was coded 9PA and started with the sub-designation 955 until 2007 when a facelift changed the coding to 957. North American buyers should note that the 2007 model year was not available, and so the 957 generation starts in 2008 if you reside in the USA or Canada. The first generation Cayenne began production in 2002 and went on sale across the world in 2003, with a concentration on the American and European market. Later generations would focus more acutely on the Chinese market, where the Cayenne, along with other Porsche SUVs, would become so popular that the brand would be forced to undertake a marketing program in the late 2010s to remind consumers across Asia that it was a sports car manufacturer at heart that produces SUVs, and not an SUV brand that makes a sports car. In America, the Cayenne has been a sales success and didn't step on the toes of the 911 sports car sales, or the smaller Cayman and Boxster. If anything, consumers added the larger Porsche to their household rather than replacing their sports car. In Europe, initial success was blunted as the Porsche brand struggled with more efficient engines to offer, culminating in the underwhelming diesel. However, the hybrids and the smaller Macan have kept Porsche SUVs a regular sight across the continent. Base models start with the simple designation of Cayenne, with Cayenne S being the next step up in line with Porsche's general structure. Later models would add the GTS and Turbo S models to offer higher specification to those wanting their Cayenne as their only car or wanting a higher specification for their everyday vehicle. The structure of the Cayenne is built upon the PL71 chassis that is shared with the VW Touareg and Audi Q7 of the time. However, to keep Porsche unique from the rest of the VW group, parts of the electronics and some engines are unique to the Cayenne, as well as the suspension tuned to Porsche specifications. This doesn't mean that the cars are completely free of the VW parts bin. The VR6 engine from VW features and some interior materials are shared with Audi, although you really have to look hard to find them. First up in our buyer's guide are the parts that commonly fail or need extra attention across the Cayenne range, whether you buy the entry 3.2 without any options or extras, or a fully loaded Turbo S. The major plus for those looking for a later model is that over the 7-year lifespan of the Cayenne, Porsche worked on the common failures, although even the last models off the production floor can't guarantee to be fault-free. Starting with cosmetic issues, the headlights on the 955 generation become cloudy. A remedy to this is to get them wet sanded to remove the discoloration, although they will then need to have a clear wrap put on them to ensure they do not immediately discolour again. Some countries, including Germany, do not have this option as their yearly inspections forbid any materials on the lens. Intake manifold heat causes two separate engine issues, one being slow degradation of the starter motor, and the other is weakening of some of the thin plastic pipes that carry coolant and merge with other parts of the piping. When looking for your Cayenne, make sure to put a torch around the intake manifold to look for any signs of these issues, and ask if any of these parts have ever been replaced. Although the chassis itself is well designed and engineered to last over tough terrain, the air compressor for the suspension can begin to suffer leaks as it ages, and once it begins leaking it will be placed under additional stress, leading to failure. If the air compressor has never been changed, consider budgeting for a new one as a preventative maintenance item. Water pumps on the Cayenne are fairly robust, but the gaskets around them are prone to failure. Fortunately, these gaskets can be replaced, although a new water pump may be worthwhile if you have no service records for its replacement. Suspension parts will be between 12 to 20 years old, and if they have not been replaced previously, they'll be past their best for good road handling. Budget for replacements unless you have evidence that they have been changed. The rubber bushings on the engine mounts live a hard life, particularly on V8 models. A new mount will be required if strong engine vibrations are felt or clear signs of bushing failure can be seen. As with any luxury SUV of this age, having a detailed service history is preferable, but look through it as some owners attempt to pad out their service records with parts receipts or tyre changes from a decade ago. And although these are helpful to have, it can make it harder to find out whether the important maintenance has been carried out. So take time to look through the paperwork, and if an owner is reluctant to give you the time to check it, or is hesitant answering questions, assume that the common issues are still likely to need fixing. The engines in the Cayenne are all powerful enough to move its weight without issue. However, for those wanting the feeling of speed Porsche is known for, you may feel that the entry models aren't powerful enough. We'll go in size order for our guide, and so we'll start with the diesel. The 3-litre diesel was introduced in 2009 and makes 237 brake horsepower with an average of 30.4 miles per gallon. Due to its late introduction to the range and limited markets it was offered in, the 3-litre diesel is one of the rarer engines to find on the Porsche Cayenne, although it sold well in the UK and Australia. The V6 diesel is sourced from the VW group, and although it has a good reputation for covering high mileages, there are some areas to look out for, notably leaks between the engine and gearbox due to a warped bell housing cover. This area is covered by underbody panels that will need to be removed to inspect the area. Early iterations of the 3-litre TDI had timing chain issues, however these are less commonly seen on the Cayenne, but still worth checking due to the catastrophic failure that can be caused if a chain fails. If the car is suffering from a rough idle, you may have a failed tensioner, and any rattling at 1500 RPM should result in immediately searching for the nearest workshop. Catching the issue before it fails is critical. Fuel injector and glow plug failures are not as common as on some other diesel engines of the time, but the 3-litre TDI is not immune to a failure of these items. The diesel particulate filter will eventually clog or fail due to its age and use. Expect a 10-year lifespan. Replacement with an identical part of good manufacturing quality is vital. The 3-litre TDI is designed to run with the DPF filter, and so replacement rather than removal is strongly advised. Next up is the 3.2 and 3.6 VR6 engines sourced from Volkswagen. They produce 256 brake horsepower and 290 brake horsepower respectively, with 20.9 miles per gallon for the 3.2 and 21.9 miles per gallon for the 3.6. These engines are an evolution of the early VR6 found in the Corrado, with the 3.6 being the final and most powerful variant. For VW, they are best known for their application in the Mark IV and Mark V Golf R32 in 3.2 form, and the ultimate version of the VW Passat, the R36, in 3.6 form. Due to these being a late evolution of the VR6 engines, they are fairly reliable, however thermostat housings are known as a weak spot, along with the main coolant pipes. Serpentine belt failure at roughly 75,000 miles is one of the known faults of the VR6 engine, and so worth changing unless it has recently been done as preventative maintenance. Timing chains and dual mass flywheel issues are understood to be considered a common fault, however they are not as common as on some other 6-cylinder engines of the time. The 4.5 litre V8 would feature both in a naturally aspirated and turbo version. In its naturally aspirated form they produce 340 brake horsepower and average 18.9 miles to the gallon. As previously mentioned, coolant pipes plague the Cayenne model, but they are especially vulnerable on the V8 engine. Premature wear of the spark plugs is another reported issue, although a strict maintenance regime should reduce the risk. Fuel pump and thermostat failures are another common problem and should be watched out for. The 4.5 litre V8 was also offered as a Turbo and Turbo S model. These produce 444 brake horsepower and 493 brake horsepower and average 17.8 and 18 miles to the gallon, with the Turbo S having a marginally higher fuel efficiency recorded, although in the real world this is likely to be unnoticeable. The majority of the issues are the same as the naturally aspirated 4.5 litre engine, however with more power comes more heat and more pressure on the coolant system. Heat exchangers should also be checked, as due to their placement and the age of these vehicles, they are likely to be in average condition at best, unless the car is low mileage. Tiptronic gearbox failure is a less common but not unheard of issue, especially for vehicles that have been driven hard, so check the car changes through each gear without hesitation to avoid a sudden large bill. The 4.8 litre V8 took over from the 4.5 in the 957 generation with 385 brake horsepower and an average of 20.6 miles per gallon. We're at danger of repeating ourselves from the common issues of the 4.5 V8, so instead we would note that these issues are considered slightly more reliable, although haven't entirely resolved the common issues of the 4.5. And were also offered in a GTS model with 399 brake horsepower, and the option of a manual gearbox, which is rare to find. The Turbo and Turbo S motor were based on the 4.8. Power output ranges from the 493 brake horsepower for the Turbo model to 550 brake horsepower for the Turbo S. Fuel economy for both engines averages at 19 miles per gallon. As before, the high-powered models put more stress on the motor and so increase the chance of known faults. Turbo-related issues have also been reported on models that have been poorly tuned or serviced with cheaper or incorrect oils. Two special editions stand out in this generation Porsche Cayenne. First is the very rare Cayenne S Transsyberia. These shared a tuned version of the 4.8 litre V8 from the Cayenne S, but were heavily modified for off-road use and are noticeable by their orange highlights. These are generally seen as collector cars with only 600 road examples produced, so expect to pay a large premium if you want to buy one. The second special edition is the Cayenne GTS Porsche Design Edition. These share a base engine with the GTS model but feature a mix of dark grey and black colours for an imposing look. The model was produced for the 2010 model year. Subscribers will know that we usually split our choice into two. However, we have made an exception for the Cayenne. For those looking at the entry-level models, the 3.6 litre VR6 engine fitted to the standard Cayenne will offer affordability and an engine that has a story with it. However, if speaking about a Volkswagen engine in your Porsche isn't your thing, and you want the 955 generation, the standard 4.5 litre V8 of the S model offers more power for little loss in fuel economy and will likely be cheaper. If your budget stretches higher, then the GTS model is a fantastic car with only 50 horsepower short of the turbo model, although it lacks the torque of the Turbo and Turbo S, but also lacks the complexity of those engines, while offering the rare chance of naturally aspirated fun in an SUV. So unless you're looking to drag race, the GTS offers you the chance to really enjoy the power on the road. We hope that you've enjoyed the guide. If you feel that we've missed anything, please let us know in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, then leave us a like so we know you found it useful. And if you'd like to see more, consider subscribing to the channel.